Hi traders and welcome to the Technical Analysis Market Watch on Friday the 9th of June. So I've certainly seen some good moves this week. We've seen some of the key players make some really good moves out of some zones, but there are some pretty key levels being tested at the moment. So we'll jump straight into the charts and see if we can identify any trades for today or early into next week. All right, we'll start out here with the Aussie USD, and we can see, look, we've had a really good bounce off that 65 level. You can see it was obviously pretty strong support, and it's had a very, very big run since we've broken through all of the moving averages, and now we're now testing the 67, or just above the 67 cent mark. Now, we've got to be very mindful at this level that although it doesn't appear to have very strong peaks and defined peaks, it is a resistance level nonetheless, because we can see right through all of this trading here that we can see a lot of interaction. If we go back and check out all of the wicks, the daily touches of the last effectively 5 or 6 months, you're going to see that there's many candles that have actually touched this level of it or interacted with it at some point. Now, this is only a daily chart, so if a daily candle is interacting with a particular zone 50 or 60 times in a very small period of time, as you can probably see, it's obviously a significant zone. So although it's not as clear as some of the peaks here that you can see at the 68 cent mark, the 67 cent mark has a lot of interaction. And I'm talking about these levels right through here. All of these wicks, you can see a big level of support there, a whole week's worth of support, whole week's worth of resistance. You can see another week's worth of support there. So in reality, it's probably going to give it some grief at this point. Now, we've had a really good move up until now. Again, it's broken for all of the moving averages, but if it's going to have trouble, this is the area it is going to have trouble. So we're going to be very mindful of that and look for a potential reversal at this point. If you have been entered already long and you're already looking for a take profit, this is the sort of area that you would be looking for. You can see we've had a rejection on this candle already. You can see the big rejection on the previous candle, but it's certainly come back for vengeance today. Now, we are still in the US trading session, of course, so a lot of action can still happen, but just be mindful that this level is pretty strong. And if it does get a break above that, then we're going to start looking at the 68 cent mark. But for me, the daily must close above 67.20 before I even contemplate looking for the longer move up to potentially the 200, which is around that 67.50, 60 at the moment, and then on to the 68 cent mark. But really, it's got a little bit of work to do to actually make that a reality if we are going to jump into the long on the Aussie now. My feeling is it's probably going to find a bit of resistance here. I think there's enough resistance there to sort of halt it. But again, we'll let price action dictate for us what is going to be the next move. So good move from here, though. Hopefully you're able to catch some of that. There's been a few opportunities to actually get long on that, but this is the target zone. So just be really mindful around this area here. All right, we'll move over to the US dollar CAD now, and this has been technically very sound again. You can see that we've sold off for the rest of the week. Since last Friday's wrap, we broke the 200 and continued on to the next support zone at around that 133.20 area. It's held up really well, and you can see it's channeled very well, the US dollar CAD. We haven't had any problems really identifying zones here, and in reality, I would expect that we're probably going to find a bounce from this point on. If it oversold the 133.20 area and it did overshoot it, look, it could potentially get back down to around that 132.50 area, which is the absolute support level. If it breaks that, we're in a bit of trouble and we'd be looking at a totally different trade, but we're still a bit away from that. We've seen a pretty reasonable sell-off a few times, and it's still been able to find support at this level and bounce straight off it again. So look, we're looking for potential long opportunities from this level now, unless we get a daily close below it. If we get a daily close below the 133, then we look at around the scalp down to the 132, sort of 50, 60 area. But again, that's the secondary trade. I'd be looking for a reversal from this point here. Look for any series of higher highs and higher lows on a smaller time frame. And then we can look at getting back up to the 134.20 in the first instance. That would be the first scalp, which is also the 200 moving average. And then onto maybe the 20 moving average if it starts to really ramp up from there. But it's going to take a bit of a reversal, and obviously price action has to turn around from here in order for us to get excited about that trade. But it's been very technically sound from the levels. We know where the support and the resistance lies. So it's really just scalping inside these zones until we get a breakout of either of those zones before we start to look at a different picture on the CAD. Okay, we'll move over to the US dollar yen now. Look, this is showing weakness now. Look, it's failed to make a new high. You can see here we hit the high here for around nearly 141. It got to about that 140.80 area. And it did get back to the 20 moving average and that role reversal zone, but it did fail to bounce from that level and make a new high. That is always a bit of a concern that maybe it's running out of steam. What it does now is going to be very interesting. If we get a break below, in my mind, it has to break below the 137.80 before I start to take any short seriously on this one. And then we're going to be looking back at the 135. But really, it's got a bit of work to do before it does that. Obviously, it's got a 20 moving average in its way, and it's also got that a very strong role reversal zone. But this here is a lower high. There's no question about that. And when you see that when you see a failed attempt at making a new high off a reasonable zone, it had a pretty good bounce point from that level. It certainly does put the red flags up. So you've got to be very, very mindful of that. It's a pretty negative sign for it. That said, if it bounces off the 20 moving average or the role reversal zone and it tests that high again at around that 140.80, we'd be talking about a very different trade. And then we're going to be looking at strength up to around that 142. But a daily close below the 137.80, and yeah, we would be starting to look very, very dim on the US dollar yen, and potential moves down to around that 135.50 and 60 zone, right through this little middle zone here. Because at that point, of course, we'll have a lower high and lower low sequence. We'll have the lightning bolt that we're looking for on the US dollar yen. So we'll have a daily lightning bolt if it closes at the 137.80. So a bit of work to do. It's got support there, no question. It's got role reversal, no question. But yeah, we're going to be very, very mindful that it did fail to make that new high. So the weakness could be setting in. But a test of this level now, from as long as it doesn't get any lower than this, and it does test this level, then we can start looking at the 142 as a potential trade. Over to the dollar index now, and look, the weakness is setting in a little bit on this one as well. It is resting on a 200 moving average and a 20 moving average, so you know it has got support where it is, and it's certainly a role reversal zone. You can see the blue line here was very strong support and resistance for quite some time. It's still an interesting trade, but it did fail to make a high. And if you look at the last 10 candles, there's a lot of wick action there with rejections at this level. Okay, so at the 140, well, the 104.50 level, 104.60 level has rejected several times now. And that's going to reflect on the US USD or the Euro USD long, of course. So we'll go to that in a second. But just be mindful that this has failed to make a new high similar to the yen. And it is at a point of no return now. It wouldn't want to break this level, because if it did, we're going to be looking at a pretty reasonable move, I think, down to about that 102 again. We'll move over to the euro, of course. That's the one we're going to trade if we are looking at that potential move. And it's found support where it needed to find support. 200 moving average, role reversal zone, round number 107. Very, very strong support here. So no real surprise to see it bouncing off this level and weakness in the dollar index. But it's right at the 20 moving average, okay? So just like the dollar index is at support, this is now at resistance, but it's looking okay. You know, it's looking like a very powerful candle out of this zone. If it breaks and closes above the 20 moving average, to me, it probably has to get to around that 1750. The 107.50 will probably get the job done for me if it does that and closes above this level. So really, it's already trading at 107.80, but it's got to hold that for the week for me. If it does that for the whole week, so meaning tonight's trading as well in the US, and we wake up on Monday morning and we're trading at least over 107.50, I'd be fairly bullish on the euro next week. Early next week, I'd be looking for moves up to around that 108.50. Still scalping. I'm not convinced it's going to go all to the all-time highs, or not all-time highs, but the recent highs of the 110 and 111 anytime soon. But it needs to break the 20 and the 50 well before it does that. So I'd be scalping in this zone until it gets to around that 108.50. And if it continues on from there, then we look for another entry point on a smaller time frame to continue the trend up. But by then, all the momentum is out with the Euro USD, and we can actually trade momentum rather than just scalping. But at the moment, we're just scalping. If we get a trade here, or even just a little bit lower, and that's where we're at on Monday with a daily close, we'll look for a potential bullish sign. But if we are underneath the 20 moving average and is trading below the 107.50 on Monday, then we'd be probably looking at testing the lows of around that 107 again until that support actually breaks. Okay. Then we'll move on to the last, of course, US 500, looking strong at the moment. It's been a strange sort of week. You can see that we've tested the level at around that sort of 4,300. Basically 5 times. It's failed to break through. This is the strongest candle so far. It's trying to actually get there. It hasn't closed yet, of course. But if really, realistically speaking, on Monday, we need to wait for this week to finish before we start to get excited. If it's closing above 43 on Monday, it's obviously going to give us a pretty reasonable sign that we might be looking to push higher. I wouldn't be taking the initial open, though. I wouldn't take the first candle close above that level. I'd wait for it to get up and then test that level from above before I'd get excited about the long. If we get a reversal sign around this point and we see a bit of weakness and we're trading under the 42.80 on Monday, I'd be looking at a potential reversal back down to the low 42s, back to the 20 moving average probably in the first instance, and then maybe onto the 41.80. But that would be, it would need to obviously reverse from here. And we need to see a series of lower highs and lower lows on a time frame like the 4 hour or even the 1 hour would probably get a scalp in. But I wouldn't be taking the first candle long from this level. It can certainly go long from here, but I don't want to be the first person in. I'd be rather waiting for a break and then a retest of that level, rounding bottom, and then off we go. So the trades both sides. I think it's got potential on both sides of the 4,300, but really price action's got to dictate what we do on a 1 hour or a 4 hour. So we'll keep a close eye on that. And it could be some interesting trading next week because these levels are they appear to be about to break or about to reverse. So we'll certainly find out on Monday, and we could hopefully have a good week's trading. So I hope everyone's had a great week. I think we've had some pretty good moves, and the levels that we've been talking about for a while are still in play. So hopefully you're able to take some advantage of some of those scalps, especially on the CAD and the Euro. I hope you have a great weekend. I look forward to seeing you all next week.